And I joined a little early, and I was listening to the previous speakers. It was really, really nice to hear such industry stalwarts and their view about where the technology is moving towards. Okay, uh, all that I'm going to talk about today is what everybody care about. Okay, and that is data. Okay, that's everybody think about, care about, run behind, and that's the business today. Okay, now before I start my session today, okay, let me start with a very bold statement. Okay, the reason why there is so much of challenge or chaos or problem still going on around data, or the way the data should be protected, is also because of few of the technologists, or maybe let's say the different solution providers completely understanding the challenge of pharma wrong. Okay, because the pharma challenges are not the same as any other manufacturing industry, or maybe any IT/ITES industry, or maybe a BFSI industry. Okay, and that is where they always come and try to position something or try to deploy something which might not be meeting the challenges of pharma industry. Now, if we have to understand what are those challenges of pharma industry, okay, let's look at them first. Now, I don't know how many of you remember what is this, because I was just listening to the Facebook and the Instagram story, and I'm sure that's where the world is moving towards. Okay, if anybody is shown what is this, hardly anybody would know that what this device means. Okay, but this is something which is very, very close to my mother. Okay, the reason being, she loves to have this land phone at home where she can dial her number easily rather than using a touch screen. And she doesn't have a problem of no network, battery down, and those kind of challenges. And at the same time, if I see on the right hand side, this is something which somebody like me or maybe my kids, they would love to use. Okay, because this is modern, this is what we require in today's life, where we are always on the move. Of course not right now, because of COVID, we are all confined to home. And I'm sure most of us, we still love that if we have a land phone rather than all the time holding the phone or having an earphone inside the ears. We would love to have a land phone with a speakerphone. Okay, now we cannot really negate when we talk about this legacy phone and the modern technology. We can't really negate. Okay, saying that no, this legacy system is no more required. Okay, or we can't say that okay, the modern system is all that we need. Okay, so we need to bridge this gap between the legacy and the modern. Okay, and when we look at pharma, this legacy system and the modern workload still exist in pharma. Okay, now when we look at these manufacturing or the quality machines which are still running on, let's say, the legacy operating systems like Windows XP, Vista, and then the modern workloads like NoSQL, Cassandra, Kubernetes, Dockers. Okay, then how do we bridge this gap when we talk about data protection, or when we talk about data backup? How do we protect this? Now, over all my conversation with most of the pharma manufacturing companies, what I have realized that there is a silo solution which is taking care of legacy, because this is legacy. Okay, so the thought is there has to be a legacy software which should take care of this part, and then there would be a modern data protection or a data backup software which will take care of the modern workload. And there might be again another in-between software which will take care of whatever has been progressed in between. What is the challenge that comes during this particular time? The challenge that comes is there are a lot of silos working, and nobody knows what is happening on the legacy workload perspective, what is happening on the modern workload perspective. So when, as a leader, you want to take a decision, it becomes way more difficult, because most of the legacy software that we are talking about, which is taking care of these manufacturing desktops and the laptops, maybe kind of machines, they are forcing pharma to go to cloud, which is again not possible for cloud, because these are very, very sensitive information which they cannot put into public cloud right away. Pharma is not ready for that. Okay, and at the same time, if you want to achieve more, then you go with this modern technology which is completely siloed. Now that is where when we look at data, there are different or multiple needs of data, right? Whether it is legacy or modern, that really doesn't matter. The need remains same, how it can be protected. And the data source becomes different. Now, if this can be unified rather than being siloed, okay, that can help for the leadership to understand what is happening from an end-to-end perspective. That means I can, from the same software, from the same console, from the same setup, when I can manage my legacy operating systems like Windows XP and all, I can still protect my modern workload, and I can also get features which are latest. I don't have to run a software with an older version of patches and get into risk. Okay, but I can have this new backup software with the latest features, but protect everything without having to be forced to move to cloud. Okay, so this is first and the foremost challenges what most of the pharma manufacturing companies are going through at the moment. Now let's look at the second challenge. Okay, the second challenge is the value of data. Okay, and as the value of data is increasing, the risk at data is also increasing. Okay, now if we actually look at what is happening around us, this gives us a very different picture in terms of what is the current value if we have a downtime, what is the reputation loss if there is a data theft, okay, and what is the challenge due to the poor data management. Okay, now when we also look at what are those different means using which there is a data theft, okay, or IP theft. Okay, the majority of the reason still remains from a malicious attack. The malicious attack, like ransomware or any other virus attack. And then 27% still remains the inside human error. Okay, there is somebody by mistake makes something which causes in damaging the data. And then around 25% remains in the system glitches, a hardware failure, maybe a software failure. That's where it remains. And the bigger challenge that has happened again post COVID is ransomware. Okay, with everybody kind of working from home, or most of the critical resources working from home, the ransomware challenge is becoming a nightmare for most of the organizations. Okay, now when we look at the ransomware challenge, then how do we protect against ransomware? First and foremost thing is the data protection software should have the foundational hardening. That means it should not be left to human intelligence that once it is installed, somebody comes and does a manual hardening, because there can always be an error. And I remember we were talking about RP and we are talking about smart RP, right? That is what we talk about smart. That means when the installation is happening, it should be basic, it should be by default. Once that is done, then the AAA process. That means who has access to the overall environment, and how do we authenticate? We make sure there is complex password. Okay, there is authentication is based on whoever is in the system and who actually have the right. And anybody is doing anything, there should be an accountability. That should be an audit log to track who is making what modification. Once that is done, these are the two things that is done. The third thing that we should also look at, then how do we make sure that from a production we can also have a predictive analysis? Because as a data protection software, it is every day touching the production workload. So we can do a honeypot mechanism. That means it just sits there and gives an alert saying there is something which is outside services trying to access your data, or a machine learning based which looks at any behavior which looks like a ransomware, because ransomware has its own specific behavior of encrypting the file or changing the access. So give you those predictive analysis. And once that is done, then the copy that the data protection software is storing, how can it make sure that it has a network segmentation, air gapping, or maybe an application validation, so that doesn't matter what happens on the production, my insurance copy, which is my backup copy, is still available to me to be restored anywhere, and a good copy. Okay. Once these four quadrants are taken care, we are very sure that if tomorrow, doesn't matter what the production goes through, we have data availability. So the third challenge is, the data's, growth, okay, and the variety of the data, okay. Uh, if you all remember, the older days, again, this telephone example is, or the story is very, very close to me, because, I come from the older generation and I jumped into the new generation. So when we look at the telephone times, there used to be a telephone directory, right? Or the way we used to store our phone number is maybe a pocket diary, or maybe, it was all here. Okay, because there were only 10 phone numbers we had to remember, and everything used to be here. But the moment we moved on to the mobile generation, then, the amount of numbers we have on our phone is really, really huge. Okay. Now what is happening with that? Okay, over a period of time, if you see, there are half of the numbers we might not even remember whether they exist or not, whether that person has the same number or not, because life also has changed in such a way that, people keep on changing phone numbers, unless and until, somebody is very, very keen saying, I need to keep one phone number. Now, similarly, when we look at data, 90% of the data what we have today is actually generated in last 2 years. Okay, last 2 to 3 years. Okay. In the old gold days, the storage procurement used to be maybe once in a year or once in 5 years maybe. Okay, and hardly a 10% growth. But if we look at any industry today, a normal 20% growth year on year is absolutely okay. Nobody even questions about that. So when we look at, this kind of data growth, the challenge that it brings in is the blind spot. That means we have so much of data right now. If we have to ask this question to our IT saying who has created this data, where this data lies, is there anything that, which is sensitive, do we need to keep this data or delete, when was this last time modified or accessed? It is very, very difficult for IT team to come back and give us that, a pictorial view or maybe an answer also. Okay, it will take ages for somebody to analyze and even come back and let us know. And when we look at this particular challenge, then we need to have a solution which can actually index the complete data, the end-to-end data, and give us that view saying this is where you have your data, what you need to do with your data, what kind of data, okay, how many copies, who has access, and all those information, so that you can decide what you need to do with this data. And next, when we move on, then the fourth challenge is the compliance. Okay, that is in every industry, and the pharma has a very specific compliance challenges. Now, what happens? The concerns of a compliance officer, if we have to look, that what questions they come back with, saying that how easily can you give me data? How quickly can you give me data? Can you give me the data in the desired format? And then, do you also depend on a third party or maybe a third party software which does this for you when there is a compliance audit? And when you have to actually get this data, how many internal teams you have to go to get a simple information, a small file? And even after that, what is the guarantee that there is an integrity, or you're getting the correct data in spite of all these things? Okay. Now, when we look at this, the challenge that we need to solve is to simplify it, to make sure that we have a compliance ready data. That means without even moving the data, we can identify whatever is the compliance officer requires just with one search, rather than going all around the organization. Just one console, go search there based on what they want and give them the exact data what they want, rather than giving them plethora amount of data. Okay. So once we are done with compliance, okay, then let's look at one of these example. Okay, before we move on to the fifth challenge. Now, in the previous generation, I would say, okay, that sounds like a very strong statement, but okay, these are the few devices which most of us we needed. Okay, either we needed it at home or maybe when we were traveling. Okay, and it was the need during that time. But when we look at today, all of these things have been consolidated into a single and small handheld device, which becomes very easy to travel or maybe very easy to use. So similarly, when we look at the challenge of pharma industry, most of the pharma manufacturing has multiple sites across maybe country or across geo as well. Now, with multiple sites, then the other challenge that comes in is the visibility and control of the whole data. And once we have that, then how do we manage and consolidate everything? Okay, forget about the operations. Okay, operation anyways would remain a challenge with so many different teams sitting at various locations. Now, for that, Commvault has the solution which everything that we just spoke about, everything bundled into just one package. That is the Commvault's Hyperscale, which is an appliance. That means from a protection to compliance to a multi-site, or maybe removing your dark data, everything with reduced complexity, with agility. That means there is absolutely no single point of failure like the traditional old hardwares, and overall reduced cost, with making sure there is a built-in security into the whole solution. Okay, so they come in different flavors, which now you end-to-end manage from a single console, whether your data protection or your hardware or your compliance or anything that we are talking about, credential manager, archival, everything you're just managing from a simple GUI. Okay, you make anybody sit here, they would be easily managing. So that is Commvault's innovation around how to meet these challenges what pharma industry goes through. Okay, so the innovations that we do is a single platform for all data. It doesn't matter whether it is legacy or modern, and proactively secure your data from ransomware kind of attack, and at the same time give you 100% immutable backup so that you have your data when you need it. Archive more data so that you reduce your overall storage consumption, and index your data so that you can meet your compliance needs. And then at the end of the day, you consolidate everything so that you can reduce the overall hardware cost by almost 50%. As an organization, we have almost 812 active patent, and that is what we do around data management, which shows that it's a technology company. And based on around 40% of our customer who report back to our cloud reporting, we have a 98% of the success rate of the total data that we are protecting. Okay, so this shows that it is not just a technology innovation, but it works as well. Now, if we also look at whether it is Forrester or whether it is Gartner, okay, in Forrester we have been rated as #1 in the leaders quadrant, right at the top. Okay, even in Gartner, it is the 10th year continuously we are the leader in the data management quadrant. Okay, and how do somebody start, okay, to start using Commvault and get this end-to-end protection? You can start from, let's say, the hyperscale appliance with the complete backup and recovery, then slowly expand to our software defined storage, then orchestrate, which is our DR solution, and then activate, which is our compliance solution. So you can start from anywhere and then expand to anywhere. Okay, so this is one of our esteemed customer who has given a feedback about the consolidation. The moment they consolidated, how they meet the challenges, and not just that, how overall they reduce the operational cost and the hardware cost and saved money over next few years. So with this, I'm done with my presentation. I'm open for any kind of question and answers. If you have any question, please let me know.
Mr. Truptendu, your wish is our command. Of course, our comment box is just flooded with questions. And truly for you. The very first is, how can Commvault help with data management across multiple cloud and hybrid developments, across different cloud providers and on-premise environments? Wow, that's quite a mouthful. But
So even though it sounded like a very complicated question, I would say it's a very great question. But this is a bread and butter for us. Okay, this is exactly what we do. Whether it is on-premise cloud, multiple cloud, AWS, Azure, or we talk about any kind of hybrid cloud or born-in cloud. Commvault supports all these workload from a single platform. We don't have to have multiple deployments to manage end-to-end. And at the same time, the solution that we have, it can also be consumed, which is on-premise as well as a service, but everything can be managed again from a single console.
fantastic answer, Mr. Truptendu. I mean, our amazing audience members cannot, this for some reason they can't get enough of you. And a second question to you is, Can you shed light on how Commvault can help address business continuity concerns on account of disasters or unforeseen events resulting to data loss?
So there are multiple things that we do around disaster recovery. One is replicating your workload to a disaster site. So if anything happens to one site, then you fail over to another site. But there are also workloads where you do not want to invest on a DR kind of solution, where you just keep it in your DC, and if something happens, you're okay if it can be on the fly converted it to a different format. That means like from on premise to a cloud format. So we can also achieve the same using Commvault, that we can do a DR as well as we can convert to multiple formats. So you can create a DR anywhere then.